Welcome back, everybody, for the last talk of the morning session. Great. Okay. I'm just going to introduce the gentleman next to me, who is, of course, Michael Tippett. He's been a technology entrepreneur really for many years, who's been at the leading edge of the fourth industrial revolution all over North America, having been involved in many tech companies and startups. But I think his perspective on this great moment is a multifaceted one, because he was trained, I think, as a philosopher. I think you told me, worked as as an Emmy-nominated filmmaker, and in the last year or so, Michael has been using AI to generate a kind of experimental film to sort of, I suppose, from scratch, to try to test the limits and the possibilities of these new possibilities and platforms. And today he's going to show us a bit of that latest film and some, perhaps, if we get time to it, some other little projects he's been working on, so we can really sort of think about lots of the creative possibilities that come with AI. So over to you. Let's give Michael a round of applause.
Thank you. So I just wanted to thank the organization here for inviting me to attend this amazing event in this incredible setting with all of these amazing people. I've really enjoyed myself and have learned so much and have really had a fantastic time, so thank you. So I think what I'm planning on doing here is I'll give you a little brief context into my personal journey and how I wound up here and what this is all about, but we'll keep it brief. Then we'll show the film, which is 10 minutes. And I'm not going to tell you much about the film itself, because I don't want to prejudice you. But I would invite any and all feedback. When I studied philosophy, I studied Nietzsche, and whatever doesn't kill me will make me stronger. So please be honest with your feedback. I have a pretty thick skin, and that's the way these things get better. So would love to hear all of your various perspectives. So a little bit about me. It's correct, I did study philosophy at undergraduate many years ago, and I was reflecting, just given the audience we have here, or the participants we have here, on how that has really impacted the way I've thought about my career and what I wanted to do and everything I've done. And so when I got out of university, my main interests were I would say epistemology, postmodernism, and I also wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so those things are obviously highly interrelated. But fortunately at that time, and this was 1993, the internet came along, and it really kind of made everything different. It changed the world in ways that were very, at the time, optimistic and positive. And I was very excited about this. And so my philosophy degree, although I would say it is vocational in the long run, in the short run was not very vocational. And so I went back to film school, which had, Vancouver Film School, which had very little philosophy, in fact none, but taught me how to actually make multimedia, which is what it was called at the time, which you would call multimodal, I guess, at this point. But this was in the early days of the digital revolution, where the internet was being born, the web was being born, and so I thought, wow, that's really going to change the world. I'm really excited about how that'll affect my ability to be an entrepreneur, to figure out new systems of knowledge. This whole network really seemed like it was going to change the world. And so I started an agency, digital agency. It was one of the first in North America, helping people build websites, which was challenging because people didn't know what the internet was. And so that was an interesting experience. But my whole thing has really been about nascent early technology. And so the web was the first example I had that in my adult life, where I thought, my God, this is really going to change the world. I want to be part of it. So we ran our agency. There was a couple of other things I did in there. I also did, when I was at film school, I started a student newspaper. I think it was the first online student newspaper, or one of, in North America. And that was informed by my kind of philosophical interests, and I called it the Centrifugal Express, and it was kind of this idea that we're kind of blowing up everything, and we had our logo was like a salad spinner, those lettuce spinners, and so it was fun. We shortened it to the sex, because that sold better and we got more click-throughs and page views. But it was a very interesting early exploration into like how epistemology and how news reporting and news gathering and telling stories was going to work early on in the internet. And so after my web design career, I then moved to New York and got involved in some of the early social networks. And this was like 5 years before Facebook or MySpace. There was that whole GeoCities. I don't know if you guys remember. There was that GeoCities wave. We were GeoCities' kind of rival. It was called theglobe.com. And so it was fascinating to see, user-generated content and influencers and the democratization of media at that early stage. So again, exploring these ideas of like new ways of transmitting information. And then we were in New York for 5 years, came back to Vancouver, and still had all of those interests, like the new epistemology and news and social networks. And so when we came back to Vancouver, the things that were changing at that point that were nascent technology were, and this is going to sound funny, but like Wi-Fi was kind of a big deal, because now you could actually go and sit in the park and you could have your laptop and you could send emails. I mean, what a mind-blowing concept. And the other thing that was even a bigger deal in my mind was the fact that phones now had cameras. We called them camera phones. Now they're just phones. Right? You can actually make phone calls on those things. I don't know if you guys knew. But that to me was like another big moment where I thought, oh my God, this is going to change. And I used to think about it as like the supply chain of information, right? Where the idea was that if something happened downtown Vancouver, let's say, that there would be people, likely 10, 15, 100, maybe 1,000 people within a block of that could take a picture, send it to a central repository, and we would be able to generate this kind of like user-generated news. And so I built a company around that concept, and it turned out to be the world's largest citizen journalism network. We had 300,000 reporters at our peak. And so it was called Now Public. Side note to the philosophers in the room, the original idea for the site was called Blue Here Now, which Blue Here Now is a famous phrase by the logical positivists, who were this group of empiricists in the 1920s, who basically were like, if we can't see it, it ain't real, right? So all I know is blue here now. And I was like, okay, so that's kind of what we're doing here. Like, we're going to have the Citizen Journalism Network. Everyone's going to have the pictures and the videos, and like, the Iraq War will never happen again because we'll know what's actually real, right? But Blue Here Now was less marketable than Now Public, so the name change again on that front. And so it was a really interesting experiment, but one where this is continuing to happen with social media, is the sort of turning the whole news organization upside down. So did that for a number of years. We ended up selling the company, and since then I've been involved in social media for a number of different organizations. And about a year ago, saw what was happening in AI and thought, oh my God, this is an even more transformative, disruptive, explosive technology than the web, the internet, maybe even social media and mobile. And it has the potential to disrupt the world in more significant ways. And it's moving way, way faster. Like I feel like I was kind of there on day one when the first email address was created. And it was fast, but it wasn't this fast. And mobile adoption, when the camera phone came out, camera phones were the fastest growing consumer product in history. And that is being dwarfed by what we're seeing in AI in the generative space. So I basically have devoted my full-time life now to researching, understanding this technology. And my approach is, on the one hand, to step back and look at the industry and do analysis, and I write about it. And the other hand is actually like rolling my sleeves up and actually doing the work to see what the limitations and possibilities of the technology are. And so what I was thinking we would do is we would show the film here. I don't want to say very much about it other than think of this as a prototype, right? Like I'm in the software development space, and in software development, there's the traditional way of building software is you would have what we would call a waterfall method, where you would spec out the entire thing. It would take months and months, and then you would hire developers, and they would kind of go down the waterfall, would kind of cascade, and they would develop the technology at various phases. And as an entrepreneur, all entrepreneurs these days know this is sort of 101 from a startup perspective, is that you can't really do that, because if you're trying to build a product that people are interested in, the best way to do that is to build a minimum viable product. In other words, the smallest thing you can build, get it out there, get feedback, and then reiterate. And I feel like that is the process that is appropriate for this new medium, because the technology is changing so fast, and all of the technology that I used to build this is now probably obsolete, and this is 3 months old. Just this week alone, being here, I feel like I'm already falling behind on what has happened since Monday. Yeah, so way to go, guys. We're actually holding back the evolution here. All that is to say is that think about this as a prototype or minimum viable. I'm not sure if it's even viable, but it's a film, and that it will continue to evolve and get better, I hope, as I learn what's working, what's not working, as the technology evolves, and as I evolve as a person telling stories and making films. So, without any further ado, shall we? Yes. Yeah, and just don't hold back.
My name is Dr. Mo Zhao. I am the lead researcher at an institute that is responsible for the development of one of mankind's most profound technologies. It's based on a system we call augmentor. Augmentor is a form of artificial intelligence that is able to inform anyone about anything they see, hear, or touch by overlaying information, sensory or otherwise, onto anyone's perception of the physical world in real time. We've merged generative AI, capable of creating any picture or sound, with augmented reality, which overlays this directly onto your field of view to transform what people see and hear. What makes it so powerful is that the technology is embedded within the systems of human perception, so it's almost invisible. There's an irony in that the thing that helps us see things that aren't there is itself invisible. In this way, augmentor works like any other form of power. You see, power also operates as an unseen bedrock of our knowledge systems, intricately woven into the very fabric of our understanding. It fundamentally integrates into our daily experiences, shaping our perception of reality. Much like a fish unaware of the water it swims in, the pervasive influence of power remains elusive, like the history that produced it, deeply ingrained in our existence without overtly announcing its presence. Augmentor is no different than any of the other belief sets that inform what we see, but the scale and completeness of this framework is something that no human being has ever had access to. Augmentor takes every fact ever known, the whole body of human knowledge, and makes it available to anyone, and helps to explain what they're seeing. It's like having history's greatest minds working with you as intellectual co-pilots in everything you do. It identifies who you're speaking to, it tracks things in your surroundings, and uses this information to anticipate what might happen next. Bird patterns in the sky might signal the arrival of rain. Fewer cars on the roads might signal that an economic slowdown is on the horizon. In the search for the most salient augmented experiences, people are driven by diverse motivations, be it financial success, romance, or simply understanding their immediate surroundings. Each use case demands an optimal augmentation, finely tuned to individual goals.
Missiles launched.
But I am not just dealing with abstract philosophical questions. I am trying to solve real-world problems for people in real time, whose lives may depend on what they see. Let's explore a mundane example, or you might simply want to understand your living room. What information is most salient to you right now? You might just want to know what the temperature is. Or maybe you want Augmentor to analyze the ambient sounds of the house to detect if there are any problems with the plumbing, heating, or other systems. Based on demographic historical information, Augmentor could show you what the room looked like in 1971. Or 1871, or even 2071. Our technology can help you understand what your living room would look like in the event of rising sea levels or how it would fare in an earthquake. But what makes the whole system intriguing is that despite the algorithm's exceptional predictive capabilities, every answer remains speculative. We cannot definitively know the room's 70s appearance or its state 70 years from now. Even the bedrock facts upon which logical answers are built are subject to flux. The accelerated rate of scientific discovery means that the world is changing by the minute. Tomorrow's discoveries will be even more dramatic and will move at lightning speed. A groundbreaking discovery in quantum computing, clean energy, or even agriculture tomorrow could reshape humanity's destiny, rendering yesterday's truths immediately obsolete. New disruptive technologies will yield new disruptive truths and dismantle old mythologies. The algorithm adapts in real time by updating augmented experiences with new knowledge, but the fundamental truth can change by the minute, reflecting the fluid nature of reality. My job is to ensure at any given time that the algorithm is able to surface and display the most salient information. In some ways, the technology is about embedding the most useful version of history into perception. Each day, I'm grappling with the creation of something that challenges our understanding: the problem of maximum perception. At the core of this challenge is the nature of truth. What is it really? A question as old as human thought. But now, as we push the boundaries of perception, we're redefining truth in ways that challenge our grasp of it. Truth, it turns out, isn't a fixed point. It's a concept that changes with time and context. As a researcher, I've spent my career exploring knowledge. But this endeavor takes me into uncharted territory. The merging of reality and augmentation is like walking a tightrope. We're not just enhancing our senses, we're fundamentally changing how we experience the world. Our work here dives deep into understanding perception. But what we've uncovered is more than just technological advancement. It's about the nature of truth itself. You see, truth isn't just facts and figures. It's a concept that's deeply rooted in our history, our culture. What's true in one era, in one society, might not be in another. It's a mythological construct, ever-changing and evolving. Our technology, this journey into maximum perception, it's not just about seeing more. It's about understanding the very architecture of meaning and context. The possibilities? Endless. From predicting stock market trends with unparalleled accuracy to navigating social interactions with ease. Imagine understanding the subtle cues and contexts of meeting new people or knowing precisely what to say in any situation. But what should be shown and what should remain hidden? Are we ready as human beings to see everything? To harness power that until now has only been that of the gods? Like the safety systems that help your car detect imminent collisions, maximum perception can see into the near future. It knows when you're about to slip on the ice. It can detect when the person you're talking to is angry or being deceitful. It knows that if you have that next drink, your reaction time will slow. It is like a crystal ball that uses probability to predict what is about to happen. With this capability, new questions emerge. Should the system steer you out of the way of all dangers? When should the co-pilot take the wheel? Remember, Augmentor can make you see anything. Maybe you don't even see the door that takes you to the dangerous place. Our technology not only empowers us to enhance individuals' perception, but it also grants us the capacity to glimpse through their eyes and comprehend their thoughts. The act of reading someone's mind, which often conjures images of probing deep into their private cognitions, becomes less intriguing when we recognize that we are actively co-authoring their mental narratives. In this sense, the distinction between reading and writing minds blurs. We're navigating this new landscape where architecture is political, and every enhancement, every filter we apply carries a weight beyond technology. It's about shaping reality itself. This story marks the beginning of a series of journal entries that I am drafting that will document the profound impact of our research on humanity. Join me on this journey. In the meantime, we invite you to be among the first to experience the groundbreaking Augmentor technology and explore the limitless possibilities it offers. Sign up for our waiting list today to be notified when Augmentor becomes available in your area, and be part of the future of human perception.
I think it was well received. Does anyone want to kick us off with some questions? Yes. Victoria, do you want, yeah, you've got a microphone.
Hi. I would love for you to tell us more about how the process of making it, if you can. I have a few ideas and questions in mind, like how do you connect script and music and the images, but also I'm thinking about a film production where you have, you organize it by scenes or scenarios, or how do you organize it? Is it the program? Like I said, a few ideas that I have, a few thoughts, but anything that you can tell me about the process of making it, I'd love to know.
Sure, yeah, happy to try to demystify it a little bit. I mean, part of the experiment here is to see how the new technology changes the mode of production. So, currently the state of the art is that you have services like Midjourney and image generation tools that are the best ones for creating specific images. If you really want something to look a certain way, Midjourney is the best way to generate that. And then you feed that into an image-to-video tool, which then essentially animates that. And that's always quite interesting because you never know what's going to happen. You can just leave it as default, and then it just says, I got this, and makes the people walk, or zooms out, or cars drive, but you never really know what's going to happen. And that gets you 4 seconds of video. The first second's awesome, the second second's pretty good, third second's maybe a bit weird, fourth second is just bizarre. And you can continue to extend that for up to 12 seconds with Runway. There's a bunch of new tools now that have come out that allow you to do like Sora, and a bunch that have come out just in the last 2 weeks that will allow you to do minutes of content. So again, all of that whole production process is now upended, which is one of the lessons I've taken from this is like you really should be a bit of a dilettante, and in the sense that you don't want to get too deep in any tool because they're so disposable. I hate to say it, but they really are. And so that's the video creation part of it. And so that is really good for things like images like this, like backgrounds and sort of, the wide shots. The hardest thing is actually getting conversation happening. And that was one of the limitations that I was dealing with when I first started this. The technology was even worse. And so, like I said, it's very difficult to actually get the damn thing to generate what you want to generate. And so I was trying to incorporate that into the story. And so that's where this whole idea of Augmentor came in, because my initial idea was that I was going to use the glitchiness of the video to be kind of like, what's wrong with my damn headset? It's making my hand look like 9 fingers, right? But even that was hard to generate. And so I ended up making it. It's more like an essay, I would say. Like there's not any real dialogue. It's just this one narrator. So then there's the narration, and so what I used for Dr. Zhao, who is also named by the ChatGPT, I just asked ChatGPT what are the most popular names in the world, first and last, and Mohammed was the most popular first name, and Zhao was the most popular second last name, and so we have Mo Zhao, the black man, who is now the Dr. Zhao. So it's like I wasn't really messing with identity. It just turns out that that's the way the computers wanted it to be. And so then I needed an avatar, and so I went to some of the best avatars that are out there are for like corporate videos. So you can get the guy to tell you how to fix your computer or get new insurance or what have you. And so he's actually an avatar from this a company called HeyGen. So you may see Dr. Zhao next time you ask for customer support. So watch out. And then there's an amazing technology called 11 Labs, which does text to audio. And you can actually clone your own voice. You can just read your own script for 2 minutes, and it will be able to then generate from text an entire audio file. It's quite powerful. So I just used one of their generic voices because they were the best. And then I used that to then lip sync with this HeyGen animation tool, the 11 Labs audio into the corporate Q&A avatar. And then I took the Q&A avatar and superimposed him onto this AI-generated background. And all of that was done through fairly traditional editing tools. I use Final Cut Pro, so that's just basically taking... and then you're kind of almost in like traditional filmmaking at this point in time, where you're kind of storyboarding it, right? So you're saying like, okay, first 10 seconds, first... it's going to be this image, this image, this image. And that's actually, I think, one of the really useful things of Midjourney is you can do that. You can kind of like block something out. You write a script. I think writing the script is still like the first part of the process. And then you storyboard it, and then you animate those storyboards, and then you refine it. And then once you've got all the visuals and the sound and the narration, I guess, in this case, then these are just visuals that are generated. They're not audio files. So like, if you see something drop, there's no sound of the thump. So then you got to go find the thump sound. And there's libraries out there that you can get the thump sounds from. And then there's music. And so that's, again, like fairly traditional. And then the final question for me is always like, okay, well, what is the output of this? Because people's attention span is so short these days that like, this probably felt like, a 3-hour movie, right? The ideal, length of a movie on the internet is like a minute. It's hard to tell a story in a minute, so they end up being kind of like commercials. So there's also tools that'll chop this up into like minute-long pieces. So that's the general production process. You had another question too, or was that no? No? Okay.
So to clarify, Michael, the AI systems were generating the shots, but you were editing you edited the film together in a traditional way on Final Cut Pro.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes, that's right. Yeah. And then there was also a few weird hacks, like the guy with the eyeshadow, the super realistic one. That was from a tool called Real Engine, which is actually like a more traditional video game authoring tool. And I could have gotten really like deep into that technology, but I thought that's not the point of this exercise. And it would have been a lot better. Like it would have looked more realistic, and the dialogue would have been higher quality. But the whole point of it was like not to try and learn the tools that other people were learning and just jettison that. But you can get like a demo of it where you can kind of generate a person and have them just sort of do this. And so that's what the maximum perception guy is. That's where he's from. So if I was, more skilled at this, I would have had him be able to engage in dialogue. But I didn't think that was the direction I wanted to go.
I've got Anthony and then Karun, and then Yunju.
Thanks, that was wild. I loved how just weird it was.
Yes.
You had mentioned commercials, and one of the things that kind of leapt out at me is that visually, in terms of their style, most of the shots did have the look of a kind of commercial. And and it seemed like a sort of string of those put together. And so I guess I'm wondering, what kind of capacity do you have to? And it was also a bit jarring because they were quite different from each other, right? They were different. They all read as kind of conventionalized, but they were very different in style. And so I'm wondering, tools of conventional filmmaking include the ability to, color grade, to make choices with respect to camera movements to try to achieve a kind of consistent and unified style across the film that often also involve departing from like conventionalized commercial style filmmaking. How much of an ability do you have to do that given the tools that you have? Is that just beyond your reach right now, or do you think like you could make something that would be stylistically very different with the tools that you currently have?
I think you could now. I think a few points I would make. One is on the observation that it seems like a commercial is actually really, because there was a call to action at the end there where you could actually sign up and go to the domain.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So and that was actually a last minute. I was like, how do I end this thing, right? And I was like, oh, this is a great punchline here. Yeah, but there's definitely like a default. If you just sort of say make me a thing, the default will be this. Usually I say cinematic or photorealistic, but I don't get into like camera angles, or I didn't for this. And part of that was just this idea of like minimum viable product and doing it in an agile way. Because everything was shortcut, right? The script was put together pretty quickly. The characters were put together pretty quickly. The aesthetics were kind of decided pretty quickly. The prompts were generated pretty quickly. Because I just wanted to get something finished, right? With the idea that like now I could go back and say, okay, well I want it to have a certain style or look different or less kind of conventional. I think the next version of it will be less conventional, but there is definitely this kind of like bias to the norm. Like you even see it with like when they do the animations of faces and stuff, like you come up with an interesting looking face, and by the time you're at like 6 seconds, it's just like your generic. The one that always gets me is like some people are interested in romance, and there's that guy walking in the parking lot, and I'm just like, that's just so cheesy.
Karoon.
Well, thank you so much for this film. I took some wonderful, some of the statements are great. It's truth changes with time and context. I love that one. It's fundamentally changing how we experience the world, and with the emphasis on we. Truth isn't just facts and figures, it's rooted in society and culture, understanding the architecture of meaning and context, maximum perception can see into the near future. You mentioned the connection between postmodernism, an entrepreneurial kind of drive, and philosophy. And I feel like this is a wonderful exemplar of this. I'm not sure about entrepreneur. I don't know if I went to the website. I didn't see what the product was, but can you comment a bit about the philosophical background that you have and those statements? It really seems like you're getting into this sort of postmodern. Are you critiquing it, or are you saying this is a way to celebrate this? Many of the aesthetics are sort of this molten reality. I'm not sure if that was deliberate or you just liked that and left it, but it definitely seemed to me to be speaking to the sense that truth is very contingent and very hyper-localized, and the we in that sentence of the way that we experience truth is very much like, yes, we're collectively experiencing our own individual truths. Yeah. So, yeah, please comment.
Yeah. I love hanging out with philosophy people. That actually was, I think, one of the key points that I ended up wanting to make. I didn't intend to. And my initial effort here was just to try to overcome the glitchiness of the aesthetic. And I thought, well, having like augmented reality would do that. And then I started thinking about, well, how do you know you're seeing the truth? And but I do think there, underneath all of that, at some subconscious level, was, I do have kind of like a bias toward the sort of postmodern way of thinking. I read a lot of Foucault. I don't know if that's obvious. And I do think that there's actually a very modernist bias in the way that people think about truth in technology. And I think the most obvious example of this is Elon Musk and his thoughts about Twitter. So Elon Musk is kind of Dr. Zhao in some respects, in that he's got the Neuralink, right? He's got Twitter, which is all the information. He's got the satellites. He's even got the self-driving cars, and his view is, and now he's got this new AI company that he's raised $6 billion for. And in his statements about his AI company, his objective is to understand the underlying reality of the universe. Right? So he believes that the truth is out there and we can just find it. And so what I wanted to demonstrate is it can be more confusing than you think. What does your living room look like, and what is your living room? As information changes, as the database is updated, even if a kind of modernist notion of truth is possible, it's going to be different from one day to the next, right? And so things that are not sustainable today might be if we invent cold fusion, right? And so then you have to update all the records, right? And so someone's, going through the grocery store with their augmented reality and looking at the labels, and they've got some app that says only buy sustainable, and it's all of a sudden everything that was unsustainable yesterday when they went down aisle 6 is now sustainable, right? These are actually kind of practical concerns in some way that I don't think anyone's really thinking about.
Unju, I think you had a question to make, and we've got Sarah and Zoe as well. So Unju first.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. I have many questions, and you don't have to answer everything. It could be just me processing things, after watching this. So years and years ago, about 14 years ago, I went to this video game kind of conference, and then there, one of the panelists mentioned that how he considers that video game could be the eighth form of the art. That there's the first form of art, the second form, and then the film being the seventh form of the art. And then because the sixth form of the art was a theater, and then eighth form of the art could be because of the interactive component and the immersive qualities that video game can play. Brings it could be, and then now I feel this AI could be in what way I'm not so sure exactly, but could be considered as ninth form of the art. And I just want to kind of ask you, how do you see that could be considered as a ninth form of the art? And now going to very practical side of it, because we do have a funding programs that's supporting a lot of film artists as well. And in most cases, compared to other projects, applications, film projects, very expensive. So it's very hard to even get meaningful funding support, and then that hinders a lot of film artists to come up with the meaningful projects, and then actually being able to complete the project because of that situation.
Can I answer your first question before I forget it?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, then we can continue. But I'll answer, because I think it's an interesting question, and this idea of the video games as the new frontier in some respects. I don't know what the answer to that question is, but I do think that it is possible, and from a technical kind of production perspective, you are going to start seeing the blurring of lines. So like Real Engine, for example, which is this authoring tool, is used to create both movies and video games. They create a kind of a world that you live in, and then things get moved around in them. So there's already this real overlap in kind of world creation that outputs both formats. And if you read about what, so OpenAI is one of the companies that has one of these more advanced video generation tools. It's called Sora. You've probably heard of it. It's tucked away in some testing area now, and everyone's kind of waiting for it to be released. But if you read about what OpenAI is hoping to do with that technology, the kind of phenomenon that you witness when you see it is the video, but the underlying technology that allows that video to be rendered in ways where people's hands don't morph and their feet don't fall off and the cars don't float up into the sky and buildings don't dissolve, is that they've built in a deeper understanding of the actual world and the physics of the world. And so Sora is just really a superficial representation of what they hope is going to be AGI, which is general, artificial general intelligence, something that can be applied generally to every single problem in the world. Yeah, I guess I guess that what that means is that there's a deeper reality there, and that the art form could kind of go in any different direction. And I think video games is one of those things where you could have a real-time narrative, story-driven film shown to you in an interactive, immersive space where you're just one of the players, and it could interact with you dynamically potentially.
Zoe.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing this with us. So I'm a student in philosophy, so I was wondering, after seeing your film, it made me wonder a lot about the possibility of using AI to do philosophy.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that might be a lens to see your work as well, and how you think about this potential.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. This is kind of how I got into media, because I was thinking about these problems and there was all these conversations about text, and how the fact that we understand things textually means we think linearly, and hypertext was one of the things that came out in the early days of the internet. I thought, oh my God, that changes the whole way we're going to think. And so I do think that the way you represent information can educate you about the philosophical dimensions of the world. And I think that this has a lot of potential too, because sometimes I'll just ask it to show me what the space-time continuum looks like. You can ask it abstract questions, right? And it will generate, and some of the weird stuff I had in there about fundamental knowledge and everything was a result of asking the various systems to try to represent that. So I think if you became maybe the greatest philosopher in the next 10 years will be the greatest prompt engineer, was Nietzsche was we're all going to be this is a great aphorist, right? That was his whole thing. The great poets, right? So maybe the great poets of tomorrow's philosophy will be people who can create prompts that generate visual insights that will solve long-standing philosophical. I don't know, Dom's probably rolling his eyes over there.
Sarah, I think.
Thank you so much for sharing this with us. I like Karun, I just loved that it kind of melted and it was kind of oozing, and it was great. My question is around, I actually saw the way that you'd spelled augmentor with AUG and then a capital on the M, mentor.
Yes.
And I assume that was intentional.
Yes.
And I wondered if perhaps you could talk more about, is that kind of tapping into the idea of maybe us not controlling AI and AI leading and controlling us, and where are those ideas coming from?
Yeah, no, exactly the idea was that you've got this kind of Copilot, which is how the stuff's marketed, right? You've got Microsoft Copilot, you've got these coding Copilots. I even reference that, right? It's like having an intellectual Copilot who's the smartest person in the world, which actually is the way these things feel like when you're working with them. They're amazing. And so, at some point, you're going to be the student and it will be the teacher, right? And so I was kind of playing with that notion, and ChatGPT came up with that name, and I was like, that's awesome. And so I just capitalized the M because that made it look more obvious. But yeah, that was the idea, is that it's augmenting everything, but you're also teaching. I'm the recipient of the knowledge as the user, customer.
Excellent. Well, we are amazingly to time, so I think it's time for lunch. Can we say thank you so much? I mean, for my part.